Hey, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. And I'm an evolutionary astrology channel, an energy worker, astrologer channel, energy worker, and also a medium. And this video today, I have been keeping to myself, just dealing with my own stuff and working away on natal reports and readings and all the things. Just working on some personal healing things too. And but this is kind of being pulled out of me. It's kind of, I feel compelled to offer you this idea in this video today. Basically, I want to give you. Today is August 4th, 2020, and we are in full swing in the U.S. with this pandemic, and people, a notable number of people each day are dying from this illness, and the government has failed to do what it can do to help stem that, and quite most of these deaths are unnecessary. And instead of me being angry about it, which I am, I was trying to figure out a way that I might be able to offer something helpful. So this video is about mediumship, kind of for the layperson or for the amateur. Not that you should do it or need to do it, but I just want to give you some insights into some things in case you have a loved one who's passed away, or in case you are supporting or connected to people who have a loved one who have passed away. And then it will be a general all-purpose kind of teaching for you about mediumship and soul and death as well, at least how I understand it from my own perspective. And how I got into mediumship, I don't talk about it a lot. Mediumship is where some people use the kind of idea of channel and intuitive and substitute with medium, but medium is really for describing when a embodied human, an alive person, deals with spirits of the dead in one form or the other, in one state or the other. And for me, it's some kinds of radio stations on this analog dial that is my consciousness. So ascended masters, one kind of frequency, angels, archangels, another kind of frequency, nature spirits, a different one, aliens, a different frequency, and dead spirits who are stuck is one station, and dead spirits who are not stuck is another station. So for me, it's just this list of stations on an analog dial, and I've learned how to find different stations over the years. But bringing through messages from those people is kind of it. And how I got into it was when I worked at a place for other people, alphabetizing things for other people years ago. Someone said to me, "Oh, so-and-so in this other department is also doing intuitive stuff. Why don't you go become friends or get to know her? And then there'll be two of you here." And so we kind of had lunch together sometimes, and she ran a mediumship meetup and taught me a lot of things about it. And when we get into these mediumship circles, I would get downloads from my guides, and they would show me all kinds of things, and I learned it pretty quickly. I don't do it formally all the time. And right now, as you see, I live in a convention expo center. This is actually from Denver Body, Mind, Spirit Expo. You can see my crystals and books on the other side. I was just playing with backgrounds and thought this was a good one for a professional video. But anyway, I just kind of got into it, and it turned out to be something really close to my heart, because it really helps living people learn to let go, learn to grieve, which is something that is hard to do and hard to learn how to do, and spend time within the space of grief is very challenging for a lot of people. And so it helps that, and it also helps spirits who are stuck become unstuck. So I really love doing it. I just don't have the setup right now in my life to do it. But I kind of tripped into it, whereas channeling I had to work really hard. Mediumship came easily. It's just something that I was suited to and I was open for. But it really speaks to my heart to help people move on, to learn how to grieve. That's one of the things that I'm here on earth to learn how to do too. So it kind of dovetails together. So I want to explain to you what happens, and some of this is on healingsuicide.com. Some of this information is there. And some of it's also in the channeled books, Understanding Loss and Death, and also Conscious Living, Conscious Dying. So you can check out those two channel books. I'll put the links in the description of the video too, to all the channel books, including those two. So the soul watches the human life unfold and learns through the human's choices, and learns through the humans, the beliefs about things, the emotions. One of the most important things that every one of us is here to do is to learn to process energy, which we experience as emotion, while we're embodied. So the soul is watching all this, and there's this chapter while the human is alive where the soul is learning, oh, that's what it's like to take a risk and seem to make a mistake, or take a risk and seem to succeed, or, well, that's what it's like when you tell the truth and it feels good, or when you don't tell the truth and it feels bad. All this life experience, the soul is learning everything and has zero judgment. At some point, when it's time for that life to be done, we will look at the tragic loss of people, including young people, and understanding loss and death. That channel book goes into this quite a lot, quite detail, quite a deep level of detail about the tragedy of losing young people, including children, or people who are in the prime of their lives, or a family where somebody passes away and everyone else who relied upon that person is left in a lurch, or kind of really disadvantaged in all kinds of ways, right? Like they rely on that person for money or support or something. But when a person passes away, that chapter of that life is complete. So you and I see tragedy, and from our perspective, yeah, let's honor that. I'm not saying we shouldn't, look at that. But from the soul's point of view, there's no tragedy. From the soul's point of view, all humans are learning, including about loss and accidents and illness and pandemics and things like that. So I just want to point that out, where the soul doesn't judge anything, and the soul doesn't see the tragedy the same way we do, but we as humans need to honor it because it's part of our learning and processing and honoring our feelings. So when a human life ends and the consciousness separates from the body, there is an opportunity, there is an opening. And not all departed consciousnesses or departed spirits, right, or the late human, I might use interchangeable terms, not all of them seize that opportunity right away. Some of them do quite easily, and some of them takes a little time. And this is where I want to focus this message for you. What can I do for a loved one who has passed away from this, or in general? What can I do to help that person, right? That loved one. That person who is now in spirit form, right? That kind of idea. So this opening is, so to speak, returning to a loving state. We think of it as, we often talk about it as going into the light, or crossing over is how it's referred to quite often. And going into the light. The light, you can call it heaven or whatever, the great beyond or whatever, is this other dimension, this other realm, where souls go through school to learn about their human lives to resolve outstanding issues. So I call it orientation. Because think about like going from middle school to high school, or from elementary school to middle school or something, where the rules are totally different and you have to get oriented to all the foundational stuff, right? Or work, or a new work assignment, or work on a new place or a new job, you get oriented, you have to get orientated or something. So you learn how things work, and in this, it's like a classroom kind of, it's like a school where some of your team, both departed family members that predeceased you, and also other helpers you may have on your team, teach you. They teach you the reasons that this relationship, that choice you made, this thing you didn't do, this thing that looks like a mistake, why those things were important for your journey and served your soul's journey. Everything that you as a departed spirit recently passed away, everything that you hold on to that's not loving, like a grudge, fear, anger about this, resentment about that, you betrayed me, you abandoned me, fear, pain, anger, all those things need to be resolved before the spirit can vibrate lovingly and move on. So as I said, there is this opportunity to enter this space, but not all take it right away. Those who take that opportunity begin a process, and there's no time that it does or doesn't take. There's no timeline, as well as there's no defining factor of when a spirit would or wouldn't choose it, for time wise. Like, it's not like, oh, they always choose it within 3 hours or 2 days. That's why we have some spirits who hang around on Earth, because they're attached to outcomes here on Earth, which I'm going to get into in a minute here, because that's really the thrust of this message. So let's say a spirit doesn't take the opportunity of this, the beginning of this transition to a new phase, this orientation phase of going into the light, being embraced by loving beings who are that person's guidance team and predeceased ancestors. Now, if that happens, the spirit is gone, so to speak, from our plane of existence. Now, if that person doesn't, there are many reasons why not. A person can judge his or her choices. A person can have issues with substances, with cheating, with having stolen something, or having lied. A person can judge him or herself and thereby somehow hold as a belief, I don't deserve God's love, or I don't deserve divine forgiveness, or something like this. Like sometimes when I talk to a spirit and I say, you don't have to be stuck here, and it can reach up, but this is my little technique that we can laugh about because it's just a device. It's just a technique. It's not really meaningful. But when I do it, you have the visual and they're like, oh my God. I just kind of reach up and I open this door into the light, but I've already called forward that person's team. So this dead spirit who hasn't processed yet or hasn't left can see that. I'm not suggesting you do this as far as you watch this video and suddenly you can be a medium, but I'm just saying to you, this is a technique that I've used where I say, look, there's a different way to be. There's your grandma. Anyway, when I do that, sometimes it looks like a door to them because I'm creating it as a door in my imagination, right? Anyway, that person, that departed spirit sometimes says, oh, I don't want to, I can't do that. I just, and sometimes the reason is I judge myself for this, that, or these 10 things, or these 1,000 things. So people who have substance abuse issues, like who die in a state of being high or drunk, they often appear that way. People who have been in comas, it's harder to get through to. People who have been on a lot of medications or in comas, right? They're harder to get through. Somebody who's passed away who had Alzheimer's, it's gonna be harder to talk to that person. I've learned recently how to do all those things, being pressed into it through different opportunities with clients where we didn't intend to do mediumship, but somebody's relative came through. That was one of the more interesting thing was there was a combo of all three where a gentleman I work with, whose mother had recently passed, had Alzheimer's for a few years, and toward the end of her life, she was in a coma and medicated, and so I had to learn how to get through all that and talk to her. It was quite a challenge, but it was really rewarding being able to get through to her. So they may not want to. They may think they don't deserve love, so they're stuck on this plane, essentially. So that's a self-judgment, number one. Number two, being attached to earthly outcomes. Like, I passed away, and you know what? I know my kids don't really get along. They're going to fight over all the inheritance stuff. Being attached to that, or God, I just wish my daughter would not marry that guy. She's engaged. It's coming up 2 months away. Can't let them get married. Like, really invested in certain things happening or not happening. And I've seen it where it's like that piece of jewelry, that family heirloom, that family piano, where like a spirit is like hanging around the dead spirit mother is hanging around an adult child client because she really is attached to the outcome of something, right? So those are Oh, and then if they are inebriated or something, they may not understand what's going on. Well, that's the third category. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened. Sometimes dying in trauma or in an altered state of consciousness because of substances, you don't know what's happening. So those are the categories. If I'm remembering all of them, I may add to that later. But I've never really codified this before in one teaching, so that something else might pop up in my mind. But those seem to me at this point in the video the three primary reasons why they might be stuck. And what I want to really get through to you today is how you can help if they're attached to an outcome, if they don't think they deserve to go into the light or to receive love, to be loved, you can help them with this. Now, even if you're not intuitive, I mean, all humans are intuitive, but even if you wouldn't identify as an intuitive or a quote light worker unquote, or a medium or psychic or channel or whatever, you might feel the loved one nearby. The person, the spirit might visit you in dreams. You might feel that presence, right? Some people would say, oh, that's not real. It's real. But if you know something about that person that he or she might judge about, or if that person might be attached to some earthly outcome that hasn't yet unfolded, like, oh my God, don't let her marry that guy, or whatever. Um, Whatever you do, don't let my daughter marry that guy. Those kinds of things. I'm laughing, but it's like because the human heart, is anyway. It's a joke. No, it's just so, there's so much stuff that we go through and that we're attached to. Um, so you can actually help that person learn to forgive him or herself if that's a problem, or learn how to give him or herself a chance to be a work in progress and overcome the idea that I made mistakes or I did everything wrong. You can help that person if you know what that is. So you don't have to be able to hear them talking. You don't have to feel their feelings, but if you know what could be their issue, you can address it in your head, or you can actually talk to them. You don't have to say anything because they're going to pick up on energy and emotion. But if you have a generosity of spirit toward them, it helps them ease toward accepting love in the way that helps them move on. So things in orientation, one of the primary things is this: why did this relationship happen? Or why did I do this to that person? Or why did he do that to me? To understand the soul's contracts together, right? So let's say that somebody passes away and you have had a tumultuous relationship with that person. You know what the issues are. You don't have to have a medium. You don't have to have that person talking to you, right? You know what the issue is. You know that person that your mother or grandmother might judge herself for something she did to you or somebody else, or something she didn't do that but maybe should have for someone. Well, you can actually begin to resolve this through forgiveness. Let's say that someone judges himself and you know it. You can decide it's okay to I'm forgiving you. It's okay for you to forgive yourself. You can decide as the human who's living, look, loved one, friend, person I know who's now passed, you know what? I'm not holding on to that. I refuse to hold on to that. And I forgive myself for being part of this. I forgive you for being part of it. Right? And this kind of thing is little droplets that contribute. They will add up because that person is getting an example of a loving attitude from you. Now, let's say it's a family member you had a fraught relationship with. This forgiveness thing is ever more powerful. At first, it might not be easy for you to do, but I promise you it works. Because some of those spirits are coming back to apologize for doing what they did or didn't do. And if you consciously work through your part of that scenario, your feelings, your judgments, your responses and reactions, and if you consciously do that, they will see you doing that. This is extremely powerful. On that note, I want to mention this thing that comes up all the time in this process, or can come up at any time for different people, most of us. We develop identities based on our experiences. Something happens to us and we decide it's who we are, or it contributes to who we are. It's necessarily will contribute to who we are, but we don't have to define ourselves by our experiences. So let's say a parent that you had a break with, or a parent who abandoned you and then you had contact with later, something like that, or a parent who didn't come through in that really important way. You might think, I'm not ready to forgive that person. And the reason could be at some level, I'm not ready to be done feeling that pain or what that pain gave me, which was the identity of an abandoned person, somebody who was whatever, betrayed, cheated, abused, hurt. But I want you to understand in this process, and this is what the spirit will learn in school or in orientation once he or she goes there, is that anybody holding on to negative judgment of another is in fact harming the self. So I want to say, if you've been hurt by somebody, and this might seem very specific and weird that I'm getting into this, but apparently somebody's guides are having me do this very specific thing. I don't know if it's you. Let's say it's probably like a lot of people. Let's say a parent abandoned you, that parent passed away, and you feel that parent spirit around you. Well, you might have spent your whole life feeling that identity, and you don't know who you are if you don't have it. That's normal for humans. We define ourselves until we learn to stop by what's happened to us. So let's say that parent judges the self. I mean, I even have my own example of this with my own dad who passed away some years ago. And what he judged himself for before orientation, then he learned how to help me, went through orientation, came back and helped me in this really cool way. And I was judging him the whole time until he came back and he was different. And I was like, oh my God, you actually went through the process. But you holding on to your pain as if it tells you who you are, this helps you in your life, in your health, in your emotional health and flow. So if I say to you, you forgiving that person for hurting you is so important. It's for your health. It's not meant to ask you to surrender the fact that that pain affected you, but to go through that pain to not letting it stop you from being who you are. So if I say it's important to forgive somebody who hurt us, I'm saying that for I'm rephrasing this in case that wasn't clear. I'm saying it for your health. When you go through orientation someday, you're going to get your own version of this invitation to see the point of the contract and to learn to forgive it. All the human things that are stuck in fear or not loving energies in orientation get revisited one by one. So that spirit learns to bring love to all the pain and confusion and fear and pain and pain and pain and fear and get over things, returning to love. But anyway, if I say to you it's important to forgive, I'm not saying to you how that experience affected you isn't meaningful, stop it or ignore it. I'm just saying honor what you have experienced and then also look at this other level of how can I grow into more love. So essentially what you can do for loved ones who's passed, who may not have gone into the light, is that. Become more loving yourself, become more understanding and more accepting yourself about them, about you, because they might hold on to feeling guilty of how they treated you or didn't treat you. The thing with me and my dad, and I've taught this before in energy is money is energy courses, and I mention it here and there sometimes, but I'll just put it in this video. I don't know if I've done it on a YouTube video before. We were estranged at the time of his death, and we had a bad relationship when we were both alive. We misunderstood each other, and I think my emotionality and sensitivity pulled out stuff in him he was trying to hide. So he couldn't really be around me because I think I pushed his buttons, I perceive. So we were estranged, and I couldn't be around him the last couple of years of his life because it was energetically and spiritually toxic to me, and I literally couldn't be there. I literally couldn't be there. It felt like I was dying engaging with him. So 2 years after the last time I saw him, he passed away. And within a couple of weeks, oh, and he had left money to his terminally ill wife, so it would go to her adult brother who couldn't care for himself. So he had left quite a lot of money. I don't know exactly how much, but three people had passed away, and he had received these inheritances, and it added up. So at that time, I was struggling with my business, living in LA, really fearful about money, and I really could have used it. And so when my sister and I found out that we got a little bit, but not, what was there, it was really hurtful. So 3 weeks after he died, he came through to apologize because he was starting to get his orientation, and now he finally understood. He could see what I'm doing here, and he wanted to support it. My response was, expletive you, get out of my expletive face, expletive off, because I was still really hurt by everything, including like the last straw, but it was everything. Oh, now you want to act like you care about me after being indifferent to me my whole life, that kind of thing. So after so at that time, he said to me, I'm sorry about the money. I'll make it up to you. Like, I'm sorry I didn't support you. I will make it up to you. And I was basically like, expletive off, whatever, you expletive. I remember exactly where this happened. He first came to me, and I was walking in LA. I used to live in, for a few months, I rented a room from a friend who lives in, what's it called? It's on Mercury Avenue in LA. It's in Lincoln Heights. Is that where it is? Close to downtown. It's hilly. And I was walking down this hill to go to a cafe and write. And he came to me on the sidewalk, and I was having this argument with him on the sidewalk. I was yelling out loud on the sidewalk. But then a few weeks later, I was giving a talk, and a medium friend of mine was guided to come there and give me a message, and that's where he came through because I wouldn't listen to it before. So he came through and gave me the whole thing. So anyway, a few years later, when I lived in Tucson, and I was making some food one day, he came through in the kitchen, and he was totally different. He was like in his late 20s, and he looked good, and at the end of his life, he didn't look so good, just very heavy and sick in a lot of different ways. But anyway, he appeared to me as he wanted to appear to me, which is how they look once they're processed, once they go through orientation. And he said to me, here is how I want to make it up to you regarding the money. Here is the message. And it was about putting a sliding scale on my services, which I did for, I don't know if it was a year or a year and a half, I did. The basic idea was detach from the number. So you receive what's coming in, you do the work, but you're not obsessed with the numbers, meaning you detach from the fear that there'll be enough. So instead of providing money, which his death would have done, right, if he had organized things in a certain way, leaving things to his, survivors, or his kids, instead of doing that, he helped me years later fix an energetic flow problem that messed with my money. So anyway, so he came back with this loving help, but he had to go through the orientation process and learn the point of all the relationships and all the choices and all the things. Anyway, that's just my little story about the orientation thing. But, think about, I'll leave you with this, or I'll leave the orientation idea like this. Like I mentioned earlier, there are two different radio stations in my own little conception of it. One for those who are unprocessed, and one for those who are processed through orientation. And essentially it's, does this feel like the person I know or knew? Or does this feel like a loving presence who's more like a spirit guide? So whatever their human garbage, karmic crap, they still carry it if they haven't gone through orientation, gone into the light. So you can tell if they're processed or not processed, if they're patient and loving, or if they're like have an agenda and they're nudgy and, interrupt you and just like pushy. So anyway, we can see, that. So anyway, working on your own forgiveness and healing is a huge part to how to help, or is a huge way to help your loved ones, people who have passed away. Give them an example of that loving frequency, so when the time is right, they can open to opt to go. Actually, you know what, I'm going to go longer and I say more things. There's something called spirit rescue and release. This is how it was taught to me, that phrasing, rescue and release, which I think is a little I think it's the rescue part's a little bit of a misnomer, but like a spirit that doesn't know it's dead or is stuck in trauma or something, a medium can intervene and help that spirit understand, right? If the spirit's attached to earthly outcomes, you could do essentially counseling, spirit counseling or spiritual counseling is how I've heard it termed. Um, if an unhappy spirit is there, you counsel that spirit and you work with that spirit and do whatever you can to help release that spirit. So I want to for you to understand, it's not in the natural order of things for spirits to remain on this plane. If they go through orientation and then come back, that's one thing. Because then they're in some way maybe guiding family members or people they know, or serving some other purpose that's intentional. But if they have not yet been processed, they shouldn't be here. They don't know that. Some of them are lonely, some of them can't get anyone into them, so they're like wandering around. Some of them are stuck where they used to live, or I've worked with spirits who a spirit who wouldn't, well, at first I could tell she had not left in decades this house that her late husband had built for them. And so I asked her to scan the feelings of the person who lived there and say, look at how you're affecting this person who now legitimately, lawfully owns this house. How can we help you go reunite with your husband? Right, but she was attached to that, this was the house that he built for us. This is my home, Anyway, I've done a lot of these different kinds of things where spirits are content to stay, but it's not in the natural order of things. What I want to say is we don't ever force anyone. So we don't come in and threaten or puff up the chest or do horrible things or do or threaten violence. What I will do is I'll say, hey, look, I want to explain to you what can happen next when you're open, and then you'll pick the time when you're open. You'll know when you're ready to explore this. And I teach them you can open the door and look and go when you're ready. And for that reason, a lot of times when I'm at the end of a mediumship session, I'll say to the client, this could happen in a few minutes or right when we hang up, or it could happen in several days or several weeks. But I'm always gauging what that spirit needs to see or understand or know or have like a handshake confirmation in order to be ready to leave. But we don't force them to leave. It's always their own accord. We don't banish anyone. We don't throw anyone out. And on that note, if a spirit is unhappy, we figure out why and we work on it and we help clear that. Then when they're less unhappy, they want to leave. So anyway, there's a lot of things. I actually made some notes for a series of shorter videos, but then I just felt impelled to do this one now. Back to 3D reality, the death toll is increasing, and it will continue to do so until there's functional, adequate, sane leadership here in the U.S. So this kind of breaks my heart. I'm sure it breaks a lot of your hearts too. But for, if this is at all helpful, then I'm happy to try to offer something that might be helpful to you. I do want to point out, I put online, both as audio and as video, 2 different sets of channel meditations that might be helpful to you. One is 22 20-minute channeled energy work meditations with Ascended Master Jehudi, also known as Thoth, Hermes, Merlin, Saint Germain, and also Archangel Metatron, who is an intensely transformative, powerful figure. So those are 22 20-minute meditations. You can listen to one every day once. You can put them on a loop for months or years. But anyway, those are on YouTube, and those are also on my site, tdjacobs.com. And the other thing is, and that's good for beginners. The second thing is not good for beginners, but is very useful once you are acclimated to the 22 days or 22 channel meditations. And it is 4-hour-long channeled energy work meditations with the same beings, Jehudi / Hermes Thoth, and also Archangel Metatron, called Processing Trauma and Grief. So I strongly recommend that you play with my grounding meditation at tdjacobs.com and the 22 days, at least some of them, to get used to that feeling of being worked on. I would not dive into the 4-hour-long meditations, but I have made them free again on YouTube and at tdjacobs.com for free. These things I used to sell for years, and I just, when this pandemic started ramping up a little bit, and I just knew that this was going to get a lot worse than any of us hoped it might. And I wanted to give you tools for energy work so that you could process some stuff. But now we have this, if you're paying attention to most kinds of media, news media, you'll hear this rising death toll, and I wanted to get this video out to you in case it's helpful. Given all that info, I'm going to close on this note. Your soul judges nothing that you do. Your soul observes that you are making choices and asserting free will, given the information and conditioning and beliefs that you possess. So you are learning through happy and unhappy experiences. You are learning, your soul is learning, and therefore you as a human are fulfilling your soul's mission. If you do something that seems like a success, as well as if you do something that seems like not a success. So the quickest route, this might seem very obvious when I say this, but then you apply it to the dead spirits who might be hanging around, departed spirits. Sorry, that's kind of crass, kind of brusque. But departed spirits, the quickest way to resolve all of this, including your health and happiness as a human continuing to live, is to look at the pain and the fear and the not love or negative frequencies. Forgive this, forgive that. Stop identifying as the person who was hurt. Stop identifying as the person who hurt somebody else. And recognize that your soul is always learning. So therefore, even when pain is created, you're doing it right. You as a soul are learning, and you are affecting other souls as humans who are learning. You're affecting them through happy and unhappy experiences, and they're affecting you through happy and unhappy experiences. So I just want you to understand you can't do any of this life stuff wrong, because the goal is, no matter what happens, to learn to take fear, pain, trauma, whatever, and move into acceptance, compassion, grace, and love. So you can see what I'm up to at tdjacobs.com, and then also check out healingsuicide.com for more info on this stuff and the soul's relationship to its many human lives, and also tips on how to deal with certain emotions that can lead us to despair, make us feel hopeless. Thanks for your time and energy. I hope this is helpful. Take care of yourself and pay attention to your thoughts and feelings, and always bring compassion, love, light to them. Because when parts of you are really unhappy, that's what they need. Goodbye.